The storm clouds were stacking over the Oregon sky when Olivia Warren, the 29-year-old CEO of a fast-growing tech firm, stepped out of her polished black SUV. She had planned a quiet weekend alone, a rare break from boardrooms, negotiations, and constant pressure, but peace shattered the moment she heard the shaking voice of a child. The little girl, no more than 5, stood near the edge of the lodge's parking lot, her tiny hands trembling, her eyes wide with panic, and her pink jacket soaked from the rising mist. And then those words came out, fragile, fearful, and desperate enough to slice through Olivia's chest, "Ma'am. I can't find my daddy." Before Olivia even processed her thoughts, she saw the girl turn and run toward the tree line, toward the thick woods stretching for miles. Something inside Olivia, something buried, something she thought she had sealed away, ignited like a spark catching dry leaves. She chased after her, her boots slipping on wet ground, her heart pounding harder with every step as the wind whistled warnings through the trees. White medium star. Before the story continues, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and helping others even when it's inconvenient, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly supports the channel and keeps these emotional stories coming. White medium star. Olivia had always been the type of woman who solved problems by logic, structure, and plans. She had grown up in Chicago with a father who left early and a mother who tried her best but never managed to patch the cracks left behind. Success had become Olivia's armor, a way to outrun the pieces of herself she feared confronting. She'd built her entire life around the belief that emotion slowed people down, that vulnerability was weakness, and that helping others was something you did only when it fit your schedule. But as she followed the frightened little girl into the woods, something unfamiliar surged through her, an instinctive protectiveness she didn't even know she possessed. The forest swallowed sound quickly, the air cold and damp, heavy with the smell of pine and old rain. Branches snapped under Olivia's steps, and fog coiled low around the forest floor. The girl ran fast, too fast for someone her size, glancing back only once as though checking to make sure Olivia was behind her. Her small voice trembled through the trees as she called for her father, a name swallowed by the wind. Olivia tried to speak, tried to tell the girl to slow down, but her throat tightened. She could see the fear etched on the child's face, and it dragged up memories she had spent years trying to bury, times when she herself had felt lost, helpless, calling for someone who never came back. The deeper they went, the darker it became. The towering evergreens nodded above them, blocking what little sunlight remained. Olivia checked her phone, no signal. She exhaled shakily, realizing she didn't even know the girl's name. But she kept going, quitting simply wasn't an option. Leaves brushed her face, roots caught her shoes, and her breath fogged in front of her. The girl finally slowed near a narrow, muddy trail, her shoulders trembling as she looked around with frantic eyes. Olivia knelt beside her, feeling strangely breathless, not from the run, but from the fragile weight of this moment. The girl's voice cracked in a whisper as she tried to explain. She had been walking with her dad on a hike. He stepped away to take a phone call. She followed a butterfly, and when she looked back, he was gone. Olivia swallowed hard, forcing calm into her voice as she promised they would find him. She took the girl's hand gently, feeling how cold and small it was. They walked the trail slowly, Olivia scanning the forest for any sign of another human. Time dragged. Minutes became heavy, stretching like vines climbing the trees. The wind picked up, brushing loose leaves across their feet, and the forest began to hum with approaching rain. The little girl tried not to cry, but every few steps her voice broke with quiet whimpers. Olivia felt something crack open inside her, an ache, a memory of her own childhood self standing in a grocery store aisle, waiting for a father who had promised to return but never did. Guilt twisted in Olivia's chest, not for anything she'd done, but for everything she never allowed herself to feel. She squeezed the girl's hand slightly tighter and vowed silently that she would not let this child feel abandoned for even a moment longer than necessary. A distant sound, faint but unmistakable, echoed between the trees. A man's voice calling out. Olivia froze, listening. The girl gasped and tried to run toward the sound, but Olivia held her gently, guiding her carefully so she wouldn't trip. They followed the voice, weaving through the brush until a figure emerged through the clearing. A man, dirty, scraped, disoriented, and limping. He looked panicked, shouting the girl's name, Sophie. As though the earth itself might swallow her whole. The girl broke free and ran to him, sobbing into his arms as he collapsed to his knees and wrapped her tightly against his chest. Olivia stepped back instinctively, giving them space, but she could feel her throat tightening with emotion she hadn't expected. The man, whose clothes were torn from tripping on rocks, whose face was etched with pure terror, looked up at Olivia with tears in his eyes, gratitude pulling his expression apart. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked too much to manage words. Olivia simply nodded, because she understood more than she wanted to admit. For the first time in years, she felt something she had lost, the quiet, humbling reminder that life was more than deadlines, investments, and profits. It was about connection, fragile, unpredictable, but profoundly real. Rain began to fall as they made their way out of the woods. Sophie clung to her father's hand with one side and to Olivia's sleeve with the other, as though she feared losing either of them. The man explained that he had slipped down an embankment while searching for her and couldn't climb back up without injuring himself further. He had shouted until his voice went raw, fearing the worst. Olivia listened quietly, absorbing every detail, feeling the weight of what could have happened pressing against her ribs. When they finally reached the lodge, lights glowing warmly through the storm, the manager rushed out to help them. Guests gathered around, whispering with concern and relief. Sophie's father insisted Olivia stay for dinner as a thank you, but she declined gently, saying she needed time alone to think. Sophie hugged her tightly, her little arms surprisingly strong for someone so small, and whispered, "You found me when I was scared, thank you." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, real tears, not the irritated kind she blamed on lack of sleep. That night, back in her room overlooking the forest she now viewed differently, Olivia stared at her reflection in the window. She saw a woman who had been running, from emotion, from her past, from human connection, without even knowing she was lost. And today, a little girl, frightened and alone, had unknowingly guided her back to something she didn't even remember she needed, compassion. As thunder rolled across the sky, Olivia opened her laptop and began typing, not a business proposal, not a finance breakdown, but an email to her company. She announced a new initiative, quarterly volunteer days for every department, paid time off for community work, and mental health support expansion. As she typed, tears fell freely, not from sadness, but from the release of years of emotional restraint. The world suddenly felt bigger, warmer, and more worth slowing down for. The next morning, she returned to the lobby where Sophie and her father were checking out. The girl ran to her again, slipping her hand into Olivia's. This time, Olivia knelt to meet her gaze and told her she was brave. Sophie beamed, then pressed a small, folded paper into Olivia's hand before skipping back to her dad. When Olivia unfolded it later, she found a crayon drawing of the three of them standing in the woods, holding hands under a bright yellow sun. At the bottom, in shaky handwriting, it said, "Thank you for finding me."